I want to talk to you today about a mental habit that I have, which results in better decision making and negotiating superior outcomes. At least it has for me, and maybe once I share it with you guys, it will as well. I do think of it as the third choice or the third option, alternative, whatever you want to call it. First, I'll tell a little story, and then we'll get into the lesson part. So, as you may be aware, but if you're not, I'm a senior software engineer. I got that promotion early this month from just regular software engineer to senior, and that's a pretty coveted position. Software engineer in general is, but senior, obviously, especially, as well as others are. But my promotion came with a nearly 40% pay rise. So it's hotly contested and something that people want, obviously. But as hard as I had to work for that promotion, it was nowhere near as hard as actually breaking into the industry in general. And that's, I think, the major gate you need to get through if you're trying to break into tech. And I've been reflecting on this because we're currently interviewing for a few positions, both in my team and outside of it. And it's interesting to see that the lengths that people will go to in order to get hired. And I thought it was worth telling you guys how I managed to break into tech. So after leaving the fitness industry, I was earning about $75,000 a year, which was good money as a 26-year-old or something, around about there. I took a pay cut though because I really wanted to establish that I had other skills. I'd worked exclusively as a strength coach and health educator up until that point, and I needed to show, that I was going to establish a separate career path. So I took a pay cut of about $8,000 and started working as a disability support coordinator. I did this for a little while before managing to get into the ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, where I was working in operations, but I managed to spin that into an operations analyst type role where I was doing a lot of data-ish stuff and it was tech adjacent. I was studying computer science at this time, just part-time, and I'd been applying for jobs left, right, and center, getting no responses, rejections, ghosted, all that stuff. This was right after the kind of COVID tech bubble had popped, so it was, terrible market. And eventually I heard back from someone. I had a firm in Richmond reach out to me, and they were willing to take me on as a junior. This was awesome news after cold email after cold email. But the job was for $52,000 a year. And now I'd taken another pay cut to get to the ABS because I thought that was closer to where I wanted to go. But I, at this point, probably 18 months after leaving the fitness industry and inflation obviously going in one direction, I was still earning $10,000 less than what I was then. So my return for my time was certainly declining, but I was pretty focused on getting into tech and confident that my skills from there would demonstrate high value, and then the financial rewards would come. But with that said, I still didn't want to take a job for $52,000 a year. I had a mortgage at this point, and it was a really tricky decision. I did not know what to do. I was like, keep my job, which is just honestly mediocre pay, comfortable, but I took it for the purpose of breaking into tech. So I have this offer here to where I can start getting experience. I can start to be paid to be a software engineer and learn. But for $52,000 a year, it was $23,000 pay cut from where I was when I left the fitness industry, which was the conundrum that I had. I decided what I would do is I would say to the tech firm, how many days a week do I need to work in order to secure this job? And they came back to me and said 3 days a week. Look, if you can only do 2, we're going to look for someone else. I said, okay, I can work with that. Leave it with me. So I went to my manager at the ABS and said, hey, I'm studying computer science. I've got this placement opportunity where I can start gaining some experience, and it requires me to be there 3 days a week. Can we do that? And they said, look, sorry, we love you and we want to keep you. But they said you would need to work 3 days a week in order to maintain your position. So I was like, okay, this is tricky. Went back to the tech job and said, can one of my days be a Saturday? And they said, yes, but you'd need to do an onboarding period first before we could tick off on your third day being a Saturday. So I said, okay, how long's the onboarding period? They wanted to onboard me for about 8 weeks, where I'd work 3 days a week, had to come into the office 3 days a week, and then I'd be able to work that day on the Saturday from home. So I took that, went back to my boss at the ABS and said, I need to do an intensive onboarding period. It would be this long. I can use annual leave to cover these gaps. And ultimately they didn't want to lose me and they signed off on it. So from there, I managed to not only secure the tech job that I was looking for, but I managed to do it while maintaining the safety of my ABS government job, which again wasn't being paid massively for, but it allowed me to average out that salary where the $52,000 from the tech job wasn't as impactful. Yeah, I was working 6 days a week and I did this for 12 odd months. But at that point, I was just spending my weekends learning more and more about developing software and writing heaps of code anyway. So spending a Saturday doing that while being paid to do it was a great trade-off. That was really pivotal for me, that moment where I wasn't just going to take the 2 options presented to me, the take the tech job or leave it, stay where I was or quit. It was me forcing myself to find a third option, something that was superior to the 2 presented. And this is where that mental model really crystallized. And I think it's something that's really worth embedding into your mental habits. You don't always need to think of a third option when you're given a binary choice. It's perfectly valid to take certain choices, but in fairly large, crucial decisions, especially one where you feel that internal tension and it feels like you're losing a part of you or something important, whichever way you go, situations like that, I think you really need to do the work of finding a third option, which will give you greater expected value than the other 2. The seed of this idea is actually found in Buddhism, where they talk about the middle path or the middle way. If you're not familiar with the story of the Buddha was basically a prince. He was someone who had all the luxuries of life, all the sensual pleasures, nice silks and food and all that. Like, his senses were absolutely being blasted with pleasure from all angles. But he sought spiritual wisdom. So he forwent all that and took up the life of an ascetic, someone who foregoes all the pleasure and basically really leans into the pain and the sacrifice of life. But he realized that wasn't the path to spiritual enlightenment either. Like, just swinging from one extreme to the other was too easy. And the Buddha and Buddhism since then has helped propagate the idea of the middle path or the middle way. It's easy to be conformist, but it's still pretty easy to be a contrarian. And those two camps of people make up the majority. Finding opportunities for a third choice or a third way of doing things is how you ensure your life takes the path that you want it to. And don't get me wrong, there's often more than 3 choices. The key point here is that I believe it's a facet of our minds and one of their traits that we distill options down to 2. We see things as right or wrong, left or right, us or them. That's ultimately the mind projection fallacy at work, I think, like inferring something about our internal state or the structure of how our minds work and projecting it onto the world and believing it's a real property of the world. There's way more than 2 choices. There's infinite ways to go through life. And yes, you might feel that because your boss has presented 2 options to you, or your partner has said it's this way or that it has to be that way. In my experience, most people are very willing to hear options outside of the ones they've presented. You just have to make sure the option you present that's outside of those ones can be beneficial to them as well. They typically just give you the options that they think are beneficial. If you can think of something that's even better for them or work out a way where there's some incentive for them to go for it, they won't have too much trouble seeing your point of view. So yeah, I think it's really worth thinking about the third option, the middle way. It's helped me make better decisions and achieve better outcomes in my life.